Did anyone ever tell you the brutal truth about life after 80? Not the version people politely share at family gatherings or in birthday cards. Not the soft, sugar-coated picture of peaceful golden years that brochures try to sell. But the real, raw experience of what it actually feels like to outlive your peers, your plans, your old routines, and sometimes even your sense of purpose. If you're not there yet, if you're in your 60s or 70s, you might still feel like there's plenty of time left. And in many ways, there is. But here's the truth that no one wants to say out loud. Life after 80 isn't just about living longer. It's about learning how to keep living when so much of what once gave you meaning quietly slips away. People imagine that crossing 80 is just another number, but it's not. It's a shift, a subtle but powerful one. It's the point where time begins to shrink, not in years, but in the shape of days, in the rhythm of your body, in the disappearance of urgency and social obligations. It's where you no longer feel rushed, but also where fewer people are waiting for you, where phone calls slow, invitations fade, and routines that used to fill your week start to evaporate. No one prepares you for that kind of silence, for the realization that the world goes on faster and louder, while you begin to feel like a quieter note in the background. It's not that people don't care. It's that their lives become so full of their own noise, their own families, jobs, and obligations, that they assume you're doing just fine. After all, you made it to 80. Isn't that supposed to mean you're wise, content, at peace? Maybe, but it can also mean you're grieving quietly for people who no longer call, places you can no longer go, and abilities that once made you feel capable. One of the harshest truths about life after 80 is that independence begins to shift. It doesn't disappear overnight. It just changes shape. Maybe you start to second guess if you should drive in the rain, or if you'll be able to get up from a low chair, or if you can carry the groceries in one trip. These aren't dramatic losses. They're quiet ones, but they add up, slowly chiseling away at your confidence until one day you realize that even though you're still alive, you're living smaller. And that can be terrifying, especially when no one notices it happening but you. There's also the invisible emotional weight of outliving people. Friends pass, siblings go, spouses fade. You start to become the one left behind. And while younger people might see you as lucky to have reached your 80s, you begin to understand something they can't yet imagine. Longevity is a blessing, yes, but it comes with deep emotional tax. Each birthday after 80 becomes a mixture of gratitude and grief. You're thankful to wake up, but you're also aware that the circle around you is shrinking. The people who once shared your memories, your slang, your favorite music, your inside jokes, they're no longer here to remember with you. And it leaves you feeling like the last chapter of a book everyone else stopped reading. It's a strange kind of loneliness, one that doesn't always look sad on the outside. You may still smile. You may still get dressed, watch TV, bake something, call a friend. But inside, you carry the invisible ache of being one of the last witnesses to your own life's history. Another truth people rarely admit is that time begins to warp after 80. A week can pass in a blink, but a single hour, alone in a quiet house, can feel like a whole day. Your sleep changes. Sometimes you wake at 3 a.m. for no reason. Not because you're worried, but because your body doesn't seem to follow the same rhythm anymore. And when you wake, the house is still, the world is asleep, and you're left with your thoughts. In those hours, something happens. You begin to review your life. Not in a dramatic or nostalgic way, but as if your mind is sorting through everything it's held for decades, looking for peace. You think about old arguments, lost chances, small kindnesses, missed calls, and the people you haven't spoken to in years. Not to dwell, but because the quiet invites it. It's in these moments that you realize how little the big stuff mattered. It's the small, almost forgettable moments that return. The look your partner gave you that one afternoon, the way your child laughed when it was 5, the kindness of a stranger who helped you once in a parking lot. These tiny memories become treasures, echoing louder than the major milestones. What also changes after 80 is your sense of relevance. You may no longer be consulted, included, or asked for advice in the way you once were. Decisions are made without you, even about things that affect you. People assume things on your behalf, often with good intentions, but it can feel like your agency is slipping through your fingers. And when you try to speak up, They may smile politely or nod distractedly, not realizing that what you're trying to express is not just a preference, but a plea not to be forgotten. That's the brutal truth. Many older adults don't feel seen, not in the way they used to. They might be acknowledged, helped, cared for, but not truly seen. There's a difference. Being helped doesn't mean being heard, and being cared for doesn't always mean being respected. After 80, it's easy to feel like your wisdom has an expiration date, like people love you, but they've stopped learning from you. And that loss of purpose, of being useful, is far heavier than most people understand. But here's something else no one talks about enough: the strength it takes to age, not just physically, but emotionally, to keep going after you've lost so much, to smile when your body hurts, to listen patiently when younger people complain about things you'd give anything to be dealing with again: work stress, loud kids, a cluttered schedule. To endure medical appointments, mobility challenges, and the constant hum of uncertainty about your health, and still get up, make your coffee, and face the day. That is courage. That is resilience. You may not climb mountains or run races anymore, but every day you get up and keep living, you are doing something that most people underestimate: surviving quietly with grace. And that deserves more recognition than the world gives. There's also the surprising power of simplicity after 80. The joy of a sunny afternoon, the comfort of routine, the way a favorite meal can make you feel grounded, the pleasure of a warm blanket, a familiar voice, a bird outside your window. These things don't seem exciting to the young, but to you, they're sacred, not because you've given up on adventure, but because you've learned that presence is its own kind of thrill. And in a strange way, aging strips away everything unimportant: the ego, the comparisons, the rush. What's left is truth. And yes, sometimes pain, but also clarity. You start to see who really matters, what really counts, and how little noise is needed to feel peace. Still, that doesn't make the challenges easier. It doesn't mean you won't have days where you feel invisible or useless or afraid, but it does mean you've earned the right to feel everything fully and to be honest about it. You don't need to pretend. You don't have to be cheerful all the time. You don't need to entertain others with your positivity. You've lived through enough to be real now. And if you're lucky enough to be heard, truly heard, by someone, that's a gift. But even if you're not, even if your truth is only shared with your own heart in the quiet hours, it still matters. You still matter. If you're in your 60s or 70s and reading this, let it be a gentle wake-up. Use this time to prepare, not in fear, but with intention. Build routines that bring you peace. Let go of the pressure to please everyone. Simplify. Forgive more easily, not because others always deserve it, but because you do. Speak your truth. Don't wait until 80 to say what's on your heart. Spend time with those who make you feel seen. And just as importantly, spend time with yourself. Learn to enjoy your own company. Because after 80, that becomes one of the most powerful things you can have. Not just companionship, but inner stillness. A quiet friendship with your own soul. The brutal truth about life after 80 is not that it's sad or lonely or empty. It's that it's honest, brutally, beautifully honest. And the more we talk about it, the less invisible it becomes. Aging isn't a decline, it's a reckoning. A peeling back of everything that never really mattered. And beneath it all, what remains is something quietly extraordinary. A life still beating, still witnessing, still capable of love, memory, and meaning. You may walk slower, but your insight runs deep. You may need help with small tasks, but your wisdom builds legacies. You may have lost much, but what remains in you is a rare and quiet power. The power to see life clearly, to live simply, to love deeply, and to face each day not with fear, but with hard-earned grace. That is the brutal truth. That is also the beautiful one. But even in this quieter phase of life, something incredible begins to emerge. Something you might not expect if you're still in your 60s or 70s. You begin to discover who you are without all the titles, roles, and demands that once defined you. You're no longer just a parent, a spouse, a co-worker, a neighbor, a volunteer, or caregiver. Slowly, the noise of doing begins to fade, and you are left with just being. And that can feel unsettling at first, like standing in a room after the music stops, hearing your own breath for the first time. But if you sit with that silence long enough, you might notice something remarkable. There's still a you in there beneath all the years, a version of yourself that existed before the world made you responsible for everything and everyone. That version still dreams, still feels joy, still remembers what it was like to dance in the kitchen or lie on your back and watch clouds. That part of you never aged. It just got buried under layers of duty. At this age, rediscovery becomes more important than ever. You may not be able to run like you used to, but you can still feel the rhythm of your favorite song. You may not be able to travel the world, but you can sit in your chair by the window and travel through memory, books, or conversation. You may not be able to solve everyone's problems anymore, but you can offer a kind word, a gentle story, or simply a calm presence, and sometimes that's more powerful than any solution. People often talk about legacy as something you leave behind, but at this stage, legacy becomes something you live. It's in the way you speak to your grandchildren, the way you share your truth, unpolished, the way you carry yourself through adversity without bitterness. These quiet acts ripple through time more deeply than you know. And even if you don't see their impact in your lifetime, rest assured, they shape the generations that follow. What also becomes apparent after 80 is how deeply your environment affects your spirit. A cluttered home can make your mind feel tangled. A room without light can mirror the fading of your own energy. But a small shift, a cleaner corner, a vase of fresh flowers, a window left open, can lift you in ways words never could. That's why now, more than ever, the spaces you occupy should reflect peace. Not perfection, not design, just peace. A chair that fits your body. A table where your memories live. A photo that makes you smile. These small things are no longer decorative. They're anchors to the self. Relationships, too, take on a new meaning. You begin to crave not crowds, but presence. Not noise, but depth. You don't need 10 people in a room to feel loved. You just need one who listens, who doesn't rush you, who doesn't speak to you like you're fragile or slow, but like you're still here, fully, vitally here. And if you don't have that person, it's okay to grieve that. It's okay to admit that sometimes, even in a room full of people, you feel alone. But here's the secret many discover late in life. When you become a friend to yourself, you stop being at the mercy of other people's attention. You begin to enjoy your own company. And that is a freedom few people find in their younger years. Of course, there are days when even that freedom feels too quiet. When the pain in your joint screams louder than the birds outside. When the names of your loved ones in your address book are more crossed out than active. When time feels like a long hallway and you're not sure where the door is. These days aren't failures. They're human. And in those moments, the most powerful thing you can do is not pretend you're okay, but to honor your own truth, to cry if you need to rest, to remember, and then when you're ready, to rise again, even slowly, even with help. The brutal truth about life after 80 is that it demands strength most people don't see, not the kind of strength you show on stages or in big achievements, but the quiet kind, the strength to keep living softly after so much has been lost, the strength to find joy in tiny things, the strength to let go of what you can no longer change and still love life anyway, and the strength to face the mirror and smile, not because everything is perfect, but because you've lived and loved and survived. There's also a strange beauty in routine at this age. Your cup of tea in the morning, the way sunlight hits your floor at 10 a.m., the way your favorite sweater feels on a cool afternoon. These aren't just habits, they're rituals. And in those rituals, there's comfort, there's order, and there's a whisper control in a world that often feels unpredictable. After 80, even the smallest things can become sacred. Folding laundry, watering a plant, hearing your neighbor's footsteps. You begin to see life not as something to conquer, but something to honor, not to speed through, but to witness. And you realize maybe that was the point all along. If you're younger, maybe still in your 60s, you might think this part of life sounds like a soft ending. But what if it's not an ending at all? What if it's a final masterpiece, where everything you've learned, lost, fought through, and loved is finally allowed to breathe without judgment? What if it's not about doing more, but feeling deeper? What if this phase, with all its stillness and surrender, is where the real wisdom begins, not the kind found in books, but the kind that lives in your bones, your breath, your quiet observations? People ask, what's the secret to aging well? Some will tell you it's exercise. Others will say diet or faith or mindset. But perhaps the deeper answer is this: acceptance. Accepting that you are no longer who you were, and you don't have to be. Accepting the aches and the slowness, not as defeats, but as signals to pay attention. Accepting that you can still change, still soften, still surprise yourself, even at 83 or 86 or 92. Because that's the truth no one tells you. Aging doesn't stop you from evolving. It just gives you fewer distractions. And perhaps the most surprising part of the stage is the rediscovery of wonder, not in grand gestures or exotic places, but in the ordinary, the way your grandchild's hand fits into yours, the smell of your favorite meal, a story you haven't told in years that suddenly resurfaces, clear as day, a stranger who smiles at you like you still matter. These are not small things. They are everything. They are proof that even after 80, life still has gifts. They may be wrapped in quieter packages, but they are no less sacred. So no, the truth about life after 80 isn't soft or sad or final. It's complex. It's raw. It's stunning in its vulnerability. And for those willing to see it, to speak it, and to live it fully, it's deeply meaningful. You carry the weight of years, but you also carry the light of them. You have suffered, yes, but also survived. And in that survival is a story that deserves to be told, not tucked away, not softened, not edited, but spoken clearly and beautifully, just as you are, because the world may not ask you for your story anymore. But that doesn't mean it's over. And sometimes the most important chapters are the ones you write for yourself.